something that's happening now in that regard is this big thing about the stuff called Roundup, which has a glyphosate in it. And there's been a huge lawsuit in the hundreds of millions of dollars from one single person that just won the lawsuit against Monsanto for Roundup. And now this is a precedent-setting case, and it's looking like
What can you explain? I'm not aware of it. Sorry, I don't listen.
this stuff is an herbicide, and it's used worldwide, and it's been used for many years, and they've always claimed it's harmless. And now they're finding out the glyphosate in it is a cancer-causing agent that is in virtually everything and everybody at this point in time. And it's in the food chain. They've discovered it in a number of different things, including everything from kids' cereals in high amounts to, like, for example, all the wheat would have high amounts of this glyphosate in it, and so on. So this is a big...
Can you put that on the screen to Wikipedia to see what it is?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, the residues of glyphosate in the water, the tap water, and the people drinking it are getting high amounts of cancer through this.
Okay, I'll look. Here's the Wikipedia on it as our faithful friend to give us a guide. Let me do the sharing here. Second.
Can you open the top picture of its atomic funding?
Okay, that one there.
Yeah. Okay, if you look at this, it gives you a very direct effect why it causes cancer. Can you go on can you bring the, what do you call it, amino acid chain of the DNA? You see, the DNA of the body of the man has a skeleton of what they call the spinal back of it, which contains, you see what it contains, and then you understand why it's so dangerous. Can you bring, what do you call it?
You want the same structure, but for DNA? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, just a second.
I'll put them next to each other. You have a facility to screen share or split your screen.
Okay, share differently here. I think that'll work. Okay, so we have the DNA here. They don't have the actual...
Yeah, they do. Open up the first picture. The first picture. Just click on that first picture there. Here you go.
Just open it up.
Yellow is phosphorus.
Just open it up. Open the two and put them next to each other. Open it up.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
This is a spine. This is a back spine bone of the shape of DNA is because of this element. Okay, open it up. Let's see what it is. That's your... Okay, go bring the other picture, not this one with the N and H. And open up the DNA next to it. No, can you go to this, not this color picture of this material? Yeah, that's it. Now open the DNA next to it until you get the same parameters on your DNA, the elements.
Yeah, it doesn't have that same structure in the
Wikipedia.
In the Wikipedia.
Okay, what is if you look at on this element, which you just say has created so much, just shrink that number and it tells you what is what. On the left, on the amino acid, just if you shrink, on the top it tells you hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, and
Phosphorus.
What do you have? What do you have on this element?
Phosphorus.
You understand? The reason this whatever it is dangerous, because it carries amino acid backbone, which is phosphorus.
It's got everything the same. It's got the hydrogen, the oxygen, the nitrogen.
But we have that.
Rick, I got the a link there for you for the DNA structure.
You see, the spiral shape of the DNA is because of the spacing of the phosphor. So in this structure, with having, can you open it on the other side? Yeah, open it up. Open it up. Let's see. You see why this is so lethal. Because it interacts in balance with the spinal, what do you call it, the backbone of the DNA. The helix shape of DNA, I've written a paper somewhere, I've explained it somewhere, is due to phosphor. So you have the phosphor which already touches the helix, so the helix changes its position, it is not the same shape because of the interaction of the fields. So in that position, everything moves. So that's why it's so dangerous. But what do they produce this material? What's the reason of production of this material? And there is a way you can change it. If it is in the waters, you can change it very simple. You can transfer, you can change the bond in a very simple way because it's connected to nitrogen. If you look at it, the spinal space of the amino acid is a protein carrier. So you have a protein in there. Nitrogen of the protein, the hydrogen of the protein, the oxygen is there. What is left is a carbon. And if you look at the, what you call the shape of the structure, it's very easy. You see the interaction of the fields themselves create the carbon. So this is a copy of the amino acid by field interaction. That's why it's so lethal. It interacts because it mimics amino acid, it mimics DNA, so DNA takes as part of it, so it opens it up, the shape of the helix changes, and that's why it's so dangerous. It's very easy. You, as knowledge seekers, you should be able to read this very, very easy. You have, look what you have. You have 5 oxygens. Yeah? You have 4 hydrogens. You have 1 nitrogen. So all you need is the conversion field forces of 1 oxygen or conversion field forces of 2 oxygen to create a field force of a carbon. Then you have a full amino acid, which is the backbone of the DNA, and then you have the spinal cord balance of the DNA helix condition, which gives you the phosphorus. That's it. Voila. You see it, why it's so dangerous. And there is a way you can change this in your systems. If you add the CO2 gas to this, will destroy it. All you need to do with this is to create a CO2, add a water, if the GANS water of the CO2, most probably CO2 itself as a GANS, 1 drop, will disbalance this, will break up the chain. Then you're left with the phosphor, and that phosphor you need, and it'll become a positive use in the structure of the body of the man, because the phosphor will change to the sulfur, become part of your immune system, and the phosphor becomes the backbone of the structure of the physical existence. You strengthen the what you call the amino acid chain. Just any of you who do these kind of tests, you can do it. Just add 1 drop of CO2 into this combination, you disbalance it. Because one of these water or oxygens loses, what's going to happen? Let's look at it when you do it. You have a H2O. You have a H2O. So now you have 2 drops of water. What are you left with? With one hydrogen and two oxygens. When you bring the two oxygen with the hydrogen, it has to split. Because if you go back in the world of understanding, in the world of creation, hydrogen and nitrogen gains or loses to become a carbon or oxygen to create the condition of life, amino acid. So when you introduce a CO2, you add to condition that the four oxygens become balanced. Then you bring the carbon, the hydrogen is released on its own, nitrogen is freed, and you bring in the total balance of the liquid, what you call amino acid. You have a P with it, now the structure is broken. It strengthens the, what you call, the amino acid, the structure of the DNA. Actually, if you understand this, you can use this as a benefit to human race than a danger to human race. If you can add a CO2 and check it and see what it comes to, then we need phosphor. We need huge amount of phosphor, because the phosphor and sulfur are part of the, when you do the blood test, you see what it comes. They look at your sulfur. Sulfur is a detergent, and phosphor is a building block. If you look at your blood test, you look at the chlorine, the chlor, you look at the phosphor, you look at the sulfur. These are disinfectant of the higher order materials in the blood of the man and the physicality. So if you add a CO2 to this, you change this to the benefit of mankind. But you have to understand why, and it's there. Now it mimics the what you call DNA, and that's why when it mimics, it puts pressure on, and then because it's missing a carbon in the amino acid chain, it moves the phosphor in a spinal cord of what are called the backbone helix structure of the DNA, and it creates havoc. It doesn't become cancer. You create a new element. But if you add, any of you are in this process, add to a CO2 to it, and you see the effect. And it can be used as a huge benefit to humanity. If you can release the phosphor, which is one of the most needed elements in the body of the man. There is nothing more needed in the body than phosphor. When you eat food and you eat the wrong food, forever your body is converting the elements into phosphor to guarantee the existence and continuity of the DNA. Every cell, every DNA cell needs that energy of the phosphor. And most of the work of the body of the man to keep the physicality of the man in his DNA is converting elements continuously to phosphor. Because every cell, every DNA, when you see a phosphor in the, I mean, in the, what you call DNA, phosphor has a cycle of life. 1 year, 6 months, 2 months, it has to be replaced. Where does it come from? Unless the body converts it, most of the conversion comes in thyroid glands, and it comes in thymus, because it uses a lot of energy of the B12 to convert, to keep phosphor always available for every single cell which is produced, carries the DNA, has the whole, is what we call the spinal backcord helix, that those phosphor in that, the guy puts just a P, you read it, that phosphor has a lifetime, has to be changed. It loses its power. So it needs to be continuously replaced. So when you have this phosphor, the time when it comes to be replaced, this takes its place, and then it creates cancer. What you call a cancer, but it actually is what we put in there ourselves, and one of the things needed. If you break it up, now you have a bigger source for a healthy life. You can change this poison to one of the biggest benefits to mankind. Many of problems we have in the world of medicine is because the phosphorus in a DNA, in a spinal helix cord, changes. And when it changes, it moves the rest of the chain, one of what we call protein amino acids in the C, into something else, or move it slightly to one side, then we call it genetic defect. If you continuously supply the body of the man with enough phosphorus that it cannot, especially in the ganses of phosphorus, you never change the DNA, you never change any, you never get any diseases. Send this to Monsanto and explain what I just explained, this section, tell them we found the solution for your problem.
This is very big, Mr. Keshe. If indeed we can prove this and show some experiments that that verify what you're saying here, this is a multi-trillion-dollar idea to Monsanto right now, and to everyone in the world, because this is the decontamination of the planet and all of the food supply and all of the waters.
Well, how is it produced? How has it been produced by Monsanto? For what reason?
Well, it's used as Flint mentions in the chat here. Glyphosate is a non-selective herbicide, meaning it will kill most plants. It prevents the plants from making certain proteins that are needed for plant growth.
But now we understand why. So, because you change the position.
For example, what happens is it works so good for killing plants is now the farmers have decided to use it before they harvest the wheat, because otherwise the wheat will grow too long into the moist season and the wheat will go bad from the moisture. So they spray it with a Roundup to kill the wheat prematurely. So this glyphosate is in the entire wheat chain, mixed in with the the cereals and grains and so on, and it's in the water supply. It's part of the process that they use for killing things and then planting just the crops that you want, and then using.
Now you understand where the killing comes from. You change the chain of the protein in the DNA.
Yes. Now, I thought it was interesting. This is the chemical signature for the phosphorus you were talking about. And it looks like two of our reactor combinations kind of joined together by the phosphorus. You see these, I think they're carbon chains actually, but it looks like three reactors and three arms coming out and so on. It's very much a similar configuration. It's a derivative. This is diphosphine, which is a derivative of phosphorus, I guess. But thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but this is what I said. You have to have a full knowledge of the science of creation.
Phosphorus.
You say they're trying to sort this thing out, and if you have a knowledge, with 1 second you can solve it. You see it.
Phosphorus has what they call the tetrahedral structure, as you can see here. The same structure you've been showing us.
Yeah, because this is part of the, that's why it has such a important position in the DNA structure. It allows too many links to be connected, but it transfers energy through it.
So much energy that it's actually a big problem right now with the phosphorus, what they call phosphorus bombing, and which is fire bombing essentially, and that's come up in the news recently because it's produced, a lot of it is produced in developed countries such as United States, and it's illegal to use, but yet it's still used in some areas by certain countries, and it's one of the most destructive things for humans. It's very, it burns. It's very destructive in that usage. So perhaps that's another way that the technology you were just talking about can also be used to help alleviate the pain and suffering that's comes from that use of phosphorus, where phosphorus is used as an actual incendiary, I think they call it.
Is it part of the orange thing the Americans use as phosphorus in this?
That's a good question. I know
orange agent they use heavily in Vietnam.
Yeah, what's her Bente knows all about that. She was actually involved with that diplomatically. Have a look at Wikipedia briefly on that, because that might tie into yet another use for, like, the CO2 GANs. We know it works well for burns, for example, so it works for also for breaking down the phosphorus, the glyphosate. It makes sense that it would. Well, Agent Orange is an herbicide. It's the same thing as the, that's what the glyphosate is used for, as herbicide.
Well, what is this backbone structure? Orange agent.
It's 2,4-D, like I think it's like DDT or whatever. It's this formula.
It uses chlorine.
Yes.
Okay, so if you go on atomic weight, what is the chlorine and what's the phosphor? In the periodic table. Expand it. Can I have my glasses from I cannot read.
I'll make it more full page here.
I'm old man, I can't see. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
If you look, okay.
We see chlorine at 17 here on the.
Okay. What is the phosphor?
See, that's right close to it on 15. Correct?
Now yeah. You see.
And sulfur is in between. Sulfur is in between that you mentioned.
Phosphorus 30, about 31, and chlorine's about 35.
Well, this is the number on the periodic table here.
Yeah, but it's talking about
It's just the number of elements.
Element. So what you see if you look at the isotopes of one and the other, yeah, you see all the phosphor is a detergent, so is chlorine. Sulfur behaves in so many times, in so many ways. Your body converts the sulfur into phosphor or a chlorine as is needed, is the conversion. Depends on if you are, for example, vegetarian, or you're a meat eater, or how much meat you eat, or how much vegetation you eat. In so many ways when you look at it, if you look at the isotopes of chlorine and you look at the isotopes of phosphor, in the bottom range of one and the top range of the other, they are somewhere similar to each other, but they are actually what I call cleaning agents. They are there to open up the amino acid structure. That's what the cleaning agent is. That's what we see it. It's very important when you do a blood test to always tell you what's the chlorine effect, because it cleans. One is for cleaning up of the physical material. One is for cleaning up of the liquid material. Chlor is used for the liquid, for the blood, and phosphor is used for the physical part of the body of the man, which is to do with the, what do you call it, with the copper. If you look at the 4 times phosphor is 60. But if you look at the chlor with a combination of what do you call it, the blood, the content of the blood, it sits on the same ratio with the hemoglobin. When you read the blood test as a plasma science in the Keshe Foundation, you look at the effects of the interaction of the fields, and you always look at the chlor, and you see what level it is. Has it got the effectiveness to clean up the blood, to allow the immune system to be effective? If you don't clean it, you can't do anything with it. The blood is saturated. And then the level of the chlorine in the blood reading has a direct effect on how you can, what do you call it, process the soul.
Mr. Keshe, why did you mention 4 times the 15 of the phosphorus being
Because
60?
60.
And I see 60 on the chart here, at least, is neodymium.
No, you don't work that way.
Magnet.
You don't work that way. You don't work that way. As in the structure of the plasma, I'm teaching you a secret in the medical application. In the process of the what you see here as 15, yeah, it means there are 15 electrons or 15 protons. If you look at the copper, it's 2930. Okay, so if you multiply phosphor by 4 and you multiply the copper by 2, you cannot go double phosphor and lock. You have to lock the copper with itself in balance field combination. So you make a twin system of the copper in phosphor, and then you have a twin of the phosphor itself. Do you understand? Hello? Are you with me?
I can't say that I am.
Okay, I'm gonna explain to you in a different way. You see, if I should be able options.
You could probably annotate.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it here for you to see.
Okay.
Okay, maybe you can. This is the way I've done all my work, and then maybe you can see it. You see, 4 times 15 is 60. Okay? Copper, it says 29, but copper is around 30 in a way, if you look at its atomic structure in the balance field, allowing the plasmatic condition. So 2 times 29 or 30 is, we call it 2 times 30 is 60. Yeah? When you create that 60 and this 60, yeah? So somewhere you have to find a balance. You need 2 phosphor. 2 phosphor gives you the 30 of the copper, okay? So now you have 1 copper here and 1 copper here, which they balance each other off. This creates a twins, yeah? Now you got 2 times phosphor, which means the 15 phosphorus, they have to balance themselves too. You understand? Why we look at the 4? Two of the phosphorus create the effect of the copper, but they still have the property of the phosphor. So you have to balance with another two phosphor. So you have two separate systems, and then you build the system, medical systems, by understanding of this process. Not just two phosphor gives you copper. If you go back into production of deuterium and hydrogen and tritium, you've seen the effect of the magnet on it. They are magnetized because they came from that source. So the double phosphor, which gave you the copper effect, has the affinity towards phosphor. That needs to be satisfied. And that's to meet the demand of the plasma field flow, you need two of it. In the future, you understand what I'm talking about, because this is the way the atomic structure in the plasma works. You create a balance that the field flow, what you create as a copper, does not get destroyed. It stays and it locks into it, the same as we showed in the balance. And chlor, it plays the same thing through the amino acid double. You
Do you
need
have
two.
to double it because of the spin effect when they have different
No,
spins?
it's a plasma. It's a plasma effect. It's a. You see, you look at this copper and the phosphor here in a matter state. You have to look at the copper and the phosphor in a gans state in the body of the man. It's a dynamic field flows. They have to find a balance or create two that it brings the thing. If you look at it in another way, as in the star formation, it takes 3 reactors in the base to match the one in the top to be able to sustain it, that it can work.